Have you ever really looked at the pills in your medicine cabinet and wondered, what's the story here? Well, a lot of them have a secret history that goes back thousands of years to roots and leaves and bark. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on that hidden history, and it all starts with one simple question. Okay, so take a look at this ancient willow tree. Now picture one of the most common painkillers on the entire planet. What on earth could connect these two things? The answer, it turns out, is a pretty amazing journey from an ancient remedy to modern medicine. And there it is. On the left, you've got the bark of the willow tree, which people have used for pain and fever since, well, forever. And on the right, a simple box of aspirin. They are, believe it or not, basically the same medicine, just separated by a few thousand years of history and a little bit of brilliant chemistry. You see, this journey, from a piece of bark to a perfectly made pill, it isn't just the story of aspirin. In a lot of ways, it's actually the story of medicine itself. Think about it. Since the dawn of humanity, we've looked to plants to fix what ails us. For most of our history, there was no difference. The pharmacy was the forest, the field, your garden. The story of our health is literally rooted in the earth. So let's just track how this all played out. For thousands of years, we just used the whole plants directly. But then, the early 19th century was a massive game changer. Scientists started asking, okay, but what inside the plant is actually doing the work? They began to isolate the active compounds, like morphine from opium, and that right there set the stage for the late 19th century when that knowledge basically kickstarted the entire modern pharmaceutical industry.
And that leads us to this really crucial moment in science. The point where we didn't just use nature, but we started to really understand and refine its chemical secrets. So how exactly did we get from that piece of bark to a pill? Well, it was a four-step chemical journey. First, scientists isolated the key ingredient, a compound called salicin. Then, through a couple of chemical steps, they turned it into something called salicylic acid. Now, this totally worked as a painkiller, but man, it was really rough on the stomach. So the final, brilliant move was this clever chemical tweak by a chemist named Felix Hoffmann. He modified that molecule just enough to create the gentler, way more effective medicine we now call aspirin.
And you can see that evolution right here. You can see the journey from the natural salicin on the left to that middle step of salicylic acid, and finally to the refined aspirin on the right. This transformation, this wasn't just a discovery. It was the spark that ignited the modern age of drug development.
But here's the thing. The incredible success of single-compound drugs like aspirin had this completely unexpected side effect. It created a major split in how we even thought about medicine. A real fork in the road appeared.
And this created two totally different philosophies. You had the traditional approach, which sees the whole plant as the medicine, believing that all its different parts work together. Then you had the modern approach, which is all about finding and isolating that one pure active molecule to make a predictable and powerful drug. And for the better part of 100 years, Western medicine went all in on that second path, the path of pure substances. But in doing so, it pretty much left behind the thousands of years of holistic, plant-based knowledge that had gotten it there in the first place. But recently, something really fascinating has been happening. There's this huge global return to the very plant-based traditions that modern medicine once turned away from. And to get a sense of the scale here, just look at this number. According to the World Health Organization, a staggering 80% of people in developing countries still rely on traditional, often herbal medicine for their main health care. That is billions of people whose pharmacy is still the natural world around them.
And this isn't just some quaint cultural practice. We're talking about a massive economic engine. Just a few years back, the global market for herbal medicine was already worth $115 billion, and it's growing fast. But hold on, because that's just the beginning. Look at the potential future. The WHO thinks that by 2050, this market could explode to a mind-boggling $5 trillion. To put that into perspective, that's bigger than the entire economy of most countries today. This is not a niche market. This is a central piece of the global economy.
And this is not just a story about the developing world. Look, while reliance is up at 90% in parts of Africa and 70% in India, it's also a big deal in developed nations. More than 40% of people in places like the US and Germany are using some form of traditional medicine. This is a truly global movement. So where does that leave us? Well, it seems like those two paths that split apart a century ago are finally starting to come back together. The future isn't about choosing one over the other, it's about building an integrated approach. This quote from the source material just says it all, doesn't it? The incredible chemical variety inside plants is a treasure trove. I mean, nature has spent millions of years perfecting these compounds, creating a library of potential medicines that is so much bigger than anything we could ever dream up in a lab.
And this is where it gets really cool. We're now finally pointing our most advanced scientific tools at this ancient wisdom. We're using brand new technologies to map out every single chemical in a plant and to understand how they all work together. We can now scientifically test and refine traditional knowledge in a way that was just never possible before.
This mashup of ancient wisdom and modern tech is creating whole new fields, like something called phytotherapy. And this isn't just your grandmother's herbalism. It's about applying the same tough scientific standards of quality, safety, and effectiveness to plant-based medicines. And this all fits into this much bigger picture of what we call integrative medicine. The goal here is simple: treat the whole patient. It brings together the best of modern science with proven complementary therapies to create a more complete and, well, holistic way of practicing medicine. Which leaves us with this one final, kind of mind-blowing thought. The journey from willow bark to aspirin, that was just one story, from one tree. There are over 250,000 known plant species on Earth, so how many more life-saving discoveries? How many more aspirins are just sitting out there, waiting for us in nature's library? It really feels like we've only just begun to read the first chapter.